Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and you know what, in the Marvel Universe, few villains stand as tall as the one and only Victor Von Doom, arch-enemy of Reed Richards and one of the most all-around dangerous men to ever walk the world, crafted by the House of Ideas. But what makes him such an enduring figure is how much he flip-flops between doing the right thing and the very, very wrong thing. I mean, sure, his motivation is always the same, secure more power for himself personally, but nevertheless, he still managed to help a lot of people whether he intended to or not. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most heroic things that Dr. Doom has ever done. Number 10. He fought his future self. Iron Man number 250. People think that Iron Man is all about business rivals trying to take down Tony Stark through giant robots or something. But you know what? Back in the Silver Age, he was just as freaking weird as the rest of them. Case in point, he had a story that he and Dr. Doom got sent to the future Camelot by Merlin to fight an even more evil version of Doom from their future. Now, Victor Von Doom is a pretty evil guy. Just ask Mark Waid whenever you've got 4.5 hours to spare. But you know what? He still has a code of honor as well as a huge ego. So when he sees this future version of himself being a more evil and more successful Doom than him, oh, you better believe that old Vicky refuses to stand for it. Instead of Iron Man saving the day, it's Dr. Doom, who strikes down and kills his future self, choosing to create God knows how many time paradoxes instead of tolerate a future version of him outdoing himself. Which is definitely egomaniacal, but in his defense, that version of him was a huge dick, so taking him out definitely should count for something. Number 9. He improved the world. Avengers Emperor Doom. Back in the day when Marvel had an entire series dedicated to putting out graphic novels, they did a single-issue story about a world in which Dr. Doom actually legitimately won. After capturing the Purple Man and using him to take over most of the world's population, Dr. Doom finds himself where he always wanted to be, right at the top of the global food chain and with no one left to stop him. So what does he do now that he's finally gotten all that he wanted? Well, he actually fixes the global economy, guarantees healthcare for everyone, brings about world peace, and generally makes everyone under him glad that he's the one in charge. Yeah, one of the running gags of the Marvel Universe is that if any villain has to take over the world, Doom would actually not be the worst pick of the litter, to the point where the Panther God Bast agrees with this assessment. And Emperor Doom showcases this fact, and the only reason that it gets undone is because he finds peace so dreadfully boring. Number 8. He cured Molecule Man's mental blocks. Secret Wars 1984. One of the most fascinating villains in the Marvel canon, bar none, is the Molecule Man. Mostly because the good Mr. Owen probably wouldn't even be a villain if he could help it, which is good because his powers are horrifying. His title is not an exaggeration. The very building blocks of all matter are his playthings, with the only thing stopping him being a series of mental blocks that he imposed on himself to keep him from going too far with his powers, as well as a crippling insecurity and self-loathing. However, the original Secret Wars storyline came along, and we all know what shenanigans Dr. Doom got up to in that story. After taking the powers of the Beyonder for his own, Dr. Doom ascends to almost godlike levels, becoming the most powerful that he'd ever be until the remake of Secret Wars in 2015. And the first thing that he does with all of this new power, he undoes the mental blocks that are plaguing Owen, because despite them being self-imposed, Doom can see that they've clearly done more harm than good for the poor man. Number 7. Saved baby Valeria. Fantastic Four number 54. One thing that's always missing from any adaptation of the Fantastic Four are Reed and Sue's 2 children, Franklin and Valeria, which is definitely weird seeing as how Franklin in particular has been a thing since the 1980s. But Valeria is much more of an interesting case because we owe her existence to actually Dr. Doom. And not like that before you start thinking that, you gross weirdos. You see, after a bunch of shenanigans that we do not have the time to get into today, Sue ended up getting pregnant with her second child. Unfortunately, in true storytelling fashion, the moment the child decides to pop out, Reed is held up by cosmic shenanigans, so they need another doctor to go to. So Johnny goes and gets Dr. Doom. Not Doctor Strange, who is an actual medical doctor and also not an insane supervillain, but Dr. Bloody Doom. Thankfully, the birth actually goes well, with Valeria being born with no complications this time around. Doom does exact a price for his services, however, but it's just to name the child, Valeria. Number 6, he protected his homeland from the zombie apocalypse. Marvel Zombies. Marvel Zombies is where happy fun times go to die, because it's the mid-2000s and everything must be edgy. Following this logic, it stands to reason that the trope of the safe haven from the zombie horde would have had a darker twist to it, and that twist, of course, is that finding this safe haven means that you have to live under the rule of Dr. Doom. Now granted, he isn't the worst leader on the planet, especially when the alternative is having your face literally eaten, but he definitely has some pretty horrible rules. For example, if if you're a young woman and you want to stay there, he has some, let's just say, requirements for you, which is what keeps this entry from getting any higher on the list. But the fact that he used his magic and technology to save as many people as he could when it would have probably been way easier for him to hop on a spaceship and just run for it definitely says a lot. Number 5. Saved his mother from hell. Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom. Triumph and torment. The one driving factor in Victor Von Doom's life has been the liberation of his Romani mother from the clutches of hell, to the point where when he just barely comes in second place in the competition for the title of Sorcerer Supreme and offered whatever his heart desires as a consolation, instead of taking the chance to finally rule the universe or anything like that, he asks for a single shot at saving his mother. With Doctor Strange tagging along for the ride, the two break into hell and manage to find and rescue Doom's mother. However, the method by which they accomplish this is a bit unorthodox, because it looks for a minute like Doctor Doom's self-destructive tendencies are actually going to screw him out of saving her when he betrays Strange in exchange for her, and his mother disowns him in response, choosing to go back to her torture and damnation and be free at the cost of another's entrapment. However, it turns out that by doing so, she had proven the purity of her soul, allowing heaven to swoop in and save her. And the most painful part about all of this, well, it's heavily implied that Doom did all of that knowing that's exactly how it would play out, willingly giving up the love of his mother in order to save her. Number 4. Liberated Latveria. Books of Doom. One of the most defining features of Doctor Doom is the fact that he is the ruler of his own nation, which means that the FF just can't knock down his door and kick his butt. Nope, they have to play by the rules. But of course, this begs the question of how he came to be the ruler of Latveria in the first place, seeing as how his origin story puts him at the very bottom of the small country's social totem pole. Well, the long and short of it was that the people of Latveria didn't exactly have a ton in the way of options. Latveria at the time was under very different but much harsher totalitarian rule, so when Doom rolled up and promised that he would just be a little bit nicer to the citizens, they gave him their weapons and tools to overthrow their oppressive regime and install him as their new ruler. Now granted, how Doom actually operates as a ruler depends on which writer that you actually consult, but generally speaking, the people of Latveria consider themselves to be way better off under his heel. Universal healthcare and a stable economy buys a lot of loyalty after all. Number 3. Tries to take over the world. Doom 2099. Now hear me out, I swear this one is genuine. Now generally speaking, Doctor Doom taking over the world is something that you don't want to happen because, I mean, look at that name. But if the alternative is living under Alchemax or Tiger Wild or any of the other mega corporations that rule the world of Marvel 2099, maybe bowing down to Doom isn't that bad of an idea. When Doctor Doom is teleported to the future, he finds himself staring down at a Latveria ruled by the evil executive Tiger Wild. Deciding that this simply cannot stand, he and a group of rebels team up to take Wild down. And of course, because this is Doom we're talking about here, he decides that he can't just stop at Latveria. Corporations like Wild cannot be allowed to exist in Doom's world, so he sets his sights on taking over the entire planet. Considering what we see companies like Alchemax get up to, it's hard to argue with Doom when he puts them in his army's crosshairs. If only we had someone like him to deal with Amazon on the same level. Pay your bloody taxes. Number 2, becoming infamous Iron Man. So at some point, even someone as egomaniacal as Doom would have to look at how he's been living his life and decide that he's clearly been doing things wrong. Eventually, he realizes that trying to take over the world has brought him nothing but grief and further loneliness, so maybe, just so that he can say he gave it the old college try, he decides to completely reinvent himself and go in the opposite direction. Thus, he rebrands himself as a hero, the new Iron Man. While the rest of the Marvel universe is none too quick to accept Doom's reformation, he eventually begins to win over the heroes as more and more of them realize that his intentions are genuinely good, and maybe they figure that they can at least show him how to keep from inadvertently falling into old habits. This is the most recent big shakeup to Doom's character, so it is unclear where Doom will go from here. There's no doubt that he'll return to evil sooner or later, but for now, Doom is giving being a good guy a legitimate shot. And number 1, saving the multiverse. Secret Wars 2015. We could just stand around and argue the moral nuances of Doom's actions all day long, but ultimately when it all boils down, the greatest thing that Doom has ever done was literally save everybody he could at once. When the Beyonders returned to the Marvel Universe with the sole intent of destroying the multiverse as we know it, the 616 and the Ultimate Universes being the last ones standing mean that Doom and Doctor Strange team up once more to stand against them. Doom, repeating the sins of his past, decides decides to steal their power for himself once more. But this time, what he does with that power is much more interesting. With the multiverse already falling apart, Doom took as much of it as he could and slammed it all together to form a single unified planet known as Battleworld. Sure, it was far from ideal and definitely not sustainable, but hey, what else could he do in that situation? I mean, sure, Reed came along and eventually put everything right, but if it wasn't for Doom, they wouldn't have even gotten that far. So let's not forget that. And there we go, my friends. Those were the 10 most heroic things that Dr. Doom has ever done. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream every single Wednesday and Sunday. Hope that you're treating yourself well, my friend, both mentally and physically. Take care of yourself, all right? Because you deserve love, happiness, and success. We all do out there. Big love from me to you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.